Hi everyone, welcome to the AstroLaunch podcast. I'm your host Amy, and today I'm so excited to welcome Dr. Pradip Shukla to the podcast. Dr. Shukla is an entrepreneur, business consultant, author, and former vice chancellor for entrepreneurship at Chapman University. Today, we'll be discussing innovation, leadership, artificial intelligence, and how students can prepare for the future. Hi, Dr. Shukla, welcome to the podcast. It's so good to have you here.
Nice to meet you, Amy.
So, to start off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your job?
Right. So currently, I'm a Chapman University professor in the Argyros College of Business and Economics, and I hold a Shah Family Endowed Chair in Innovativeness, where one of the things we're trying to do is to basically increase the awareness of opportunities in manufacturing, supply chain management, logistics, distribution. And we want to increase the awareness of college students, but also high school students, even middle school students, seventh, eighth graders, because there are a lot of great opportunities in aerospace manufacturing, other manufacturing firms, and even in supply chain and logistics. And maybe I could talk about my own educational background, so that'll help, the students. So it was interesting when I was in high school, my high school counselor recommended that I should not go to college or university, and it was recommended that I should instead go, become a auto mechanic, go to a trade school, vocational school. And I think to overcompensate for that, because that inspired me to, excel, I ended up getting 7 college degrees and went to a community college, got an AA degree in mathematics, went to Cal State Long Beach, got a Bachelor of Science in Management, a Bachelor of Arts in Economics, an MBA from Cal State Long Beach, a master's in education from UCLA, a PhD from UCLA, and a master's from USC in marketing. And along the way, I picked up a industry certification called CPIM, Certified Production Inventory Management. And that helps me when I'm doing consulting with the manufacturing industry and meeting executives.
Wow, that's like a lot, and you seem super experienced too. So, what gave you the confidence to pursue higher education despite someone in authority telling you otherwise?
Well, I think, the main thing is everyone who's watching and listening, you have to have confidence in yourself, because if you let others set limits and boundaries and what you're capable of, or and sometimes they may prejudge or preconceive, and they don't really know what your true talents are. So you have to have faith in yourself, confidence in yourself. Now, if you have weaknesses and you want to have a high goal that you're aspiring to, certainly there are a lot of resources, especially nowadays online and in the community and with your friends and relatives and parents. So certainly take advantage of all the resources. And you never know what your limits are until you push yourself to achieve more.
So, looking back, what lessons from your early years still influence your work today?
I think the main thing, what I notice in, my career path compared to others, is that some individuals, they sort of look at work as, well, I just want to do the bare minimum, punch in, punch out. And your supervisors notice the quality of your work, they notice the quantity of your work, and they sort of judge in their mind, who do I want to fast track, groom, promote, mentor, and who do I view as just sort of like, okay, it's not worth my time trying to help them to achieve more. So one thing I noticed is that you should volunteer whenever there are opportunities, even if you don't see an immediate payoff, even if it's not a increase in salary or benefits, you should still volunteer just so you learn something new, you grow, you develop. And also, it shows your supervisors that you're a little bit more ambitious than all of your coworkers who are saying, no, I don't have time for that. So,
I think stories like yours are a great reminder that success isn't always a straight path, and not everyone will have like step-by-step blocks to get to success, and there can always be like some redirection, but they always lead to success. So now let's dive into like innovation and the future of engineering. So as we all know, like aerospace engineering has transformed society through innovation. So in your view, what separates innovators from everyone else?
well, I think, the main difference is that innovators, they look at challenges, they look at problems, and we're facing quite a few challenges globally and within the US and firms also in competing. But innovators, they look at challenges as opportunities. So, for example, right now, if we have sort of like currently in Europe, there's a heat crisis or, extreme heat temperatures, individuals who are creative would say, okay, I'm not just going to complain about the heat and, just say that things are beyond my control, but they're going to try to find solutions or products or services or collaborations. What can the government do? What can consumers do? What can others do as joint effort? So I think creative individuals, they look at the world in terms of opportunities. And the other thing I noticed with innovators is that they don't just think within their disciplinary area, but what they do is they sort of see connections between different areas. So you might have an engineering background, you're quantitative, scientific, mathematical, but you could learn some things from art and from music, and you could learn things from architecture that could help you when you're doing engineering problems. I think the creative individuals, they see beyond just their primary discipline.
So I know like many students think that innovation requires like genius level intelligence or even in like aerospace. So do you agree or like is innovation a skill that can be developed later on?
No, definitely innovation can be developed. And I actually teach a class at Chapman University, Creativity and Innovation. And a lot of students wonder, well, how can you teach me to be more creative? Well, we give them exercises and challenges. So, one example is we have them sort of take songs that they naturally listen to and look at the lyrics. And I teach classes in operations, manufacturing, supply chain management. So, I ask them, identify a song that you like and how do those lyrics in the song relate to some topic that you covered in the class or in the textbook? And it's amazing, students who naturally would say, oh, I don't see any connection at all. When they start thinking about it, they see, oh, yeah, that line in that song reminded me of what we just talked about in the lecture last week. The other thing where creativity can be taught and developed and innovation can be taught and developed, I actually have a book I recommend to the students. And nowadays it's a free PDF version you could get or free summary. But the book was about how to think like Leonardo da Vinci, 7 steps to increase your creative thinking process. And a lot of students and most individuals would recognize Leonardo da Vinci. He was way ahead of his time with his developments in art, but also in science and engineering and aircraft design. And the students say, take those 7 steps and ask them for 14 consecutive days, apply those 7 steps. And what I tell them is if you don't do it in 14 days, you might not see a difference. But the more important thing is not that you see a difference, but without telling your friends or your coworkers or supervisor or parents, relatives, siblings, without telling them you're doing this for 14 days, see if anyone tells you they notice a difference in your being more inquisitive or being more detailed or being more organized or being more meticulous or better ideas generated. And it's amazing, almost every student who does that for 14 days, they all report that others commented. So it's not they felt they were more creative because they were going through the class and the assignment, but others actually said, oh, how are you thinking so differently nowadays? So definitely it could be done.
So what are some examples where innovation emerged from constraints rather than like unlimited resources?
Well, I think, we see some examples. So one example is where we had the introduction of tablets and we had the Apple piece and the Apple tablet and the iPad. And it was useful. It was used in education schools, even today, 2026. A lot of elementary schools, they have students learning through tablets and doing educational games and videos. And it was a great tool within the United States, but many students and teachers, schools in India could not afford those. So we had engineers who sort of reversed engineered and said, how could we reduce the cost? How do we keep the essential features? But how do we reduce the unnecessary frills? And thereby we could reduce the cost. So they significantly reduced the cost of the tablet And they were able to sell it at a reasonable price in India for the schools. And it wasn't so much for profit, but the idea was to help the educational system. So that's where constraint helped to lead to new innovation. Another couple of examples where during the pandemic, obviously for individuals who were hospitalized, respiratory illness, they needed to have mechanical ventilators. It was literally life and death. And there were countries and cities, nations where they couldn't afford the mechanical ventilators. So some individuals became very creative. So I remember this one example where a nurse, I think in the United States, came up with an idea that they were currently having each patient having their own ventilator, and they would have cycles where it's on, cycles where it's off. So some nurse came up with a adaptation where she said, why don't we share one mechanical ventilator between two patients because they don't constantly need the mechanical ventilator. So that helped to save lives. Someone I think overseas actually experimented, and in engineering, reverse engineering, they developed a mechanical ventilator using a vacuum cleaner. So an everyday household vacuum cleaner, and somehow they were able to engineer it. So it again saved lives by being creative, and it's because of that constraint they were forced to be creative.
So innovation is clearly much more than just having ideas, but like using resources around you to develop something new. So now let's talk about one of the biggest forces shaping innovation today, which is artificial intelligence. So one of your talks focuses on merging AI with human intelligence. So how do you see AI like changing engineering careers over the next decade?
Right. So I give a lot of lectures on artificial intelligence and combining it with human intelligence. And I think the analogy is that we used to have a fear 10, 20 years ago that we have robots and now we have humanoids. So some individuals, even today, are saying, oh, the robots are going to take over all the jobs. All of the humans are going to be unemployed. You're wasting your time getting a college degree. And that's not necessarily true. What we're seeing is that robots are not replacing humans, but robots are collaborating, working on the assembly line, working on factories, working in hospitals and elsewhere, where they're collaborating with the humans. So they call it cobots. So collaborative humans and collaborative robots. Similarly, I think the same thing is going to happen in artificial intelligence. It's not that AI is going to replace everyone's job. AI is going to be a tool that's going to be used by professionals to enhance their productivity and efficiency. Now, on the other hand, if you have low skill sets, things that could easily be replaced with algorithms, then I would worry if you just have a high school diploma, no science, no STEM. And then I think, you might have some fears about AI, affecting your job security. And one thing I tell students is, they're afraid about this because they're investing a lot of money going to college. And what I tell them is back in October 1987, the stock market, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, dropped 22% in one day. So this was in October 1987. And the reason was that they used what were called expert systems at that time. And expert systems where they had algorithms and computer programming code to replace human stockbrokers. So the algorithms would decide when to buy stocks, sell stocks, hold stocks. And the algorithm was programmed where it said if certain bad economic indicators are announced that day, sell some of your portfolio. If the indicators are worse, sell more of your portfolio. If the indicators are really bad, sell everything in your stock portfolio. So back in 1987, we had computers and algorithms, expert systems replacing human stockbrokers. Now, today, 2026, I still have students who are majoring in finance at Chapman University, and they're still majoring to become human stockbrokers, or they're going to be in the stock brokerage firms working on the algorithms. So I'm not worried about AI replacing high skilled individuals. I think that high skilled individuals are certainly going to continue having job security.
So should students be worried that like AI will replace engineers, or should they like view it as a tool? Because I know that even in my school, many people talk about like, oh, like why are you doing computer science? Like it's gonna replace you. So should students be like worried about that?
Well, we're still going to have, some jobs like basic computer coding. If you're doing a simple app or simple application, that could easily be replaced with AI. But now, who is going to write the AI coding? Who's going to test the AI? Who's going to do the beta tests, the validation? Who's going to do the upgrades? Who's going to train the corporations and their executives to use the AI? So if you're graduating majoring in computer science, I think you're still going to have opportunities. The analogy is when I was a undergraduate college student, I worked as a bank teller. And this was back when we had branches. We didn't have ATM machines. We didn't have cyber banking or telebanking or on your smartphone banking or banking app. And human bank tellers have been replaced with all of those new technologies. But you still have bank branches open. You still have jobs created in banking. Someone is doing maintenance on those ATM machines. Someone is writing the code for that smartphone app so you could deposit a check with your smartphone. So we don't have the human bank tellers like we used to, but we have others who are doing jobs related to that.
So, like, what uniquely like human skill do you believe will be more valuable in the AI-driven world?
Well, I think definitely team building, consensus building, leadership, conflict resolution, negotiations. So let's say we have some dispute between two parties or two companies or two nations. AI is not going to be able to go to the negotiation table and say, okay, I'm going to work out a deal. It requires human interaction because there's a lot of emotions involved. There's political considerations, there are other psychological considerations. You're thinking about future transactions with these individuals you're negotiating with. So AI can't really replace those kinds of things. So if, we call them soft skills, but leadership, communication, motivation, conflict resolution, negotiation, all of those are things where humans are still going to be needed.
So, if you were starting college today, how would you prepare yourself for the AI embedded future?
Well, I think definitely get as much education as you can. And the good thing is, in California, where I'm at, we have several California community colleges. So we have like 107 California community colleges, and the tuition is low cost. So if you can't afford a private university or you're constrained by finances and not going straight to a four-year public university like a UC system or Cal State or whatever state you're viewing, go to the community colleges because the tuition is low cost. They offer classes, they have faculty who are often working in industry. An example, my daughter is the dean of the School of Business and the School of Applied Technology at College of the Canyons in Valencia, California. And they offer a lot of seminars. They have guest speakers who come in. They offer classes in person, online, hybrid. And this gives you flexibility. So definitely take advantage of the education. And a lot of the online certifications are available for free also. I know Google is offering certifications. And you have programs like Coursera where you could take classes from like Harvard or Stanford or other places at basically a no cost or low cost enrollment.
So, you're advised as CEOs and entrepreneurs through many stages of business growth. So, what leadership traits consistently stand among successful leaders?
Well, I think the big thing I tell, CEOs is that whatever their values are and initiatives and direction they're moving the company, the CEO has to set the tone and the role model. So, for example, if your company is saying we're going through a possible fear of a recession and we're worried about having to lay off employees, so we're going to ask each of you to take a salary freeze. And some of you were entitled to a promotion. Unfortunately, we don't have money to give you the promotion. We could give you the title, you'll do more work, but you're not going to get paid more. Well, if the CEO is expecting the employees to sort of assist with this financial crisis, they have to also set a role model. At the same time, the CEO is saying this to the employees, if the employees are seeing waste at the executive level, the CEO level, they're seeing waste in travel or wasted money going towards consultants who are not delivering results, then I think that sets a poor example for the rest of the employees. The other thing is, I think what every CEO has to remember is that you have to make decisions very quickly today in 2026. You can't say, I'm going to think about it for 7 days or I'm going to think about it for 2 days. You have to decide quickly. Now, you're not always going to be right. You try to make the best decision with the data you have. But the main thing is to remember you should always try to be fair. If someone asks you, why did you do this? That's not what I recommended. At least you should have an answer and say, well, based on the data I had, this is the data. If your answer is, well, I felt like it, that's not going to create respect among the employees and the subordinates. So be fair and also set a good role model.
So, what mistakes do ambitious young people commonly make when pursuing success?
I think the big thing I see now with college graduates and perhaps also with the high school graduates is that they set over ambitious timelines for their career ladder. And what happens is I think you have to have a little bit more patience. So it used to be that you slowly work your way up a corporate ladder. You stay at the company 2, 3 years. You start off doing work you may not really enjoy and it's tedious. But if you hang in there in 3 years, you'll get the promotion. And then you move up and you become a supervisor and then go into mid management. The problem I see with a lot of college students and graduates today is that they want to get an advancement within like 6 months or 10 months or a year. And they quickly leave a company for what they think is a better opportunity. And the result is that I think they limit their career ladder because you're jumping from one company to another. Maybe they offer more salary, but you're not going to build a reputation of being loyal to a company. If someone looks at your resume and you worked at 4 companies in 3, 4 years, before they hire you, they're going to say, why should I spend all this training and effort? Because you may be gone in a year from now.
So, like, how should people be ambitious but still keep in mind that they need to stay true to their ground and not jump between stuff?
Well, I think the good thing is nowadays we have an opportunity I didn't have when I was in college, which is a gig economy and doing side hustles and doing things where you work on your own startup. So let's say that you're working at a company part-time 20 hours a week, or you're working full-time 40 hours a week, and you don't have, other time constraints. So you're able to put some additional time. Maybe you have a friend who's starting a business and you have some skill set that could help the business. Maybe you have a business idea. So we have a lot of entrepreneurship centers throughout the United States at colleges, universities, and they could give you guidance on setting up your business. So what you're able to do is you still keep on your resume that job continuity, you keep your employer happy, you're doing your job, you're not, violating company policy where you're taking trade secrets or anything. But you keep that job. If the side hustle delivers a little bit of money, that's great. It gives you some extra spending money. If it really takes off and becomes something where you say, okay, now I want to give up my full-time job and I want to focus on growing the business. So I think that's the way where you can still be ambitious. You're keeping busy, you're developing your skill set, you're trying to develop new products, ideas, and you're still able to get a good resume there.
That's really good advice because, me personally, even though I want to do aerospace engineering, I would also like to pursue entrepreneurship. And I would definitely take this advice, going or after graduating college. So, thank you so much for that. So now for the students who are interested in aerospace engineering, what skills outside of the classroom are important for long-term success?
I think, most students who are interested in engineering, they're going to be obviously strong in math, science, quantitative areas. But I think one thing which I've seen lacking is you need more awareness of what engineering is like outside of the United States and what engineering developments are occurring outside the United States, because most of the classes you're going to take, the teachers, professors, and colleges, they're going to focus on developments in the United States. But there's a whole world of research and technology. So we see, for example, you should know about what's happening with China and what they're doing with AI, what they're doing with engineering. And you look at some of the construction projects, and we have a lot of new developments now with 3D printing, additive manufacturing. So we even had, like, near Los Angeles, near LAX, we had a company that was 3D printing the spaceships and at a much lower cost. We see other industries like in housing, there's a affordable housing crisis in California. People can't afford homes, single family homes. But in Texas, they're having a company where they're 3D printing single family homes. In China, I read that they actually 3D printed like a 5-story hotel. So be aware of what's happening outside of the United States. And I think, that's important because when you work on global challenges, global problems, you're going to be working with teams and members who are outside the US. So the more you understand their background, their preparation, their education, you'll be a better team member and team partner.
And lastly, how can young engineers develop leadership abilities before they have like formal leadership positions?
Well, definitely, most every high school student, young individual at college, you're going to join the on-campus clubs and organizations. You want to put for your college app, if you're in high school, extracurricular activities, what you've done beyond just the academic classroom and GPA and SAT test score. But there are opportunities with community nonprofit groups where they're looking for youth. So, an example, I sit on a nonprofit organization. I'm on the board of directors, and they do social service, assisting with, domestic violence, assisting with child abuse, elder abuse, assisting with immigration. But they're looking for individuals who are good at social media, individuals who might be good at taking photographs of events, individuals who might be good at doing videography. So assisting those nonprofit organizations would look good because one, you're doing a social impact, and second, you're developing your skills. And it's something that shows anyone who's looking at your resume or LinkedIn profile that you're going above and beyond what everyone else is doing. Also, I think what you have is I've worked recently with seventh, eighth graders and ninth through 12th graders. And something that the Ivy League schools are looking at now is get a university professor as a research mentor and do some joint research or joint publication. And again, that would show that you have leadership skills and that you're going above and beyond just the bare minimum. So I've worked with some high school students and middle school students. We did research topics on what they were interested in. And then one student ended up being accepted at Princeton, one ended up at Cornell. So I think those opportunities exist. And if anyone's interested, I think, feel free to contact me. And, I'm Shukla at chapman.edu.
Dr. Shukla, thank you again for joining us today. This was such an insightful conversation, and I learned so much about not just like innovation and leadership, but also how the future was like AI driven and how we can like use that to our advantage instead of being scared of it. And your personal journey and advice were incredibly inspiring, and I know that our listeners will also take away valuable lessons from this episode. So thank you so much for being here.
And thank you, Amy, for the opportunity. And, I was impressed with your website and past, podcasts that, you're setting the example for your classmates. You're setting a good role model that high school students need to be more proactive and more engaged with broader issues, such as how do we fill the shortage of skilled aerospace engineers in the future. So, congratulations to you and your team. And it may be a one-person team, but congratulations to you. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who joined us for today's episode. I hope you all learned something new and felt just as inspired as I did. Make sure to join me next time for another conversation that inspires curiosity and learning. Till then, explore, engineer, and elevate. See you next time.